All right, welcome and good evening. You are here for the April program of ACAP Cape Fear. For those of you who aren't familiar, ACAP is Adult Children of Aging Parents, and it was started over 10 years ago by Frances Hall in the Hickory, North Carolina area. And she was an educator within the university system, I believe, and also a family caregiver. And so she really took those two passions and put them together to create a nonprofit that would educate and provide resources for people who are family caregivers, specifically the adult children. And then also her idea was to have a community that would come together and provide support for each other too. So we really appreciate you taking time out of your caregiving journey, if that's what you're on, or taking time to learn ahead of time also. So our presentation tonight is facilitating safety and independence as a caregiver, and you're going to be hearing from Beth Locke, who is an occupational therapist and actually comes to the home to provide those services. So we're really blessed to have her tonight. My name is Dorothy Griffin. I'm with Griswold Home Care, and I am the co-chair of the leadership team here for the ACAP Cape Fear group. So we have chapters that are in Georgia, North Carolina, New Jersey, and I think there's one other one I'm forgetting. Pennsylvania is the newer one, I think. So what you're going to expect is that you'll hear from a sponsor, because all of these programs are free to you based on having sponsors provide some resources to us so we can put them on. And then Beth will take up the majority of the time, and we really are informal. So if you have questions, please feel free to raise your hand. If you're in our streaming audience, feel free to type up your questions, and Nikki will share those with our speaker, and she will say what the question is too, just so the streaming audience can hear what the question is, just in case they don't hear from the audience. So I'm going to introduce our sponsor tonight. Linda Barrow is with Elder House, and she's going to share a little bit about how they can be a support.
All right. Well, thank you, Dorothy. We're also a proud core sponsor for ACAP. But once again, my name is Linda Barrow, and I'm the Marketing Enrollment Director for Elder House. And Elder House, right now, we have 3 service divisions. We have a home care division. We have Elder House at the Lake, which has been around in Wilmington for a long time, since the 70s. And that is adult day activity center. It's there to give those caregivers a break. And there is a lot of veterans there, different types of funding, private pay. But Robin Nelson is the director there. So if you like additional information, do not hesitate to contact me, or you can contact Elder House at the Lake on our website. But I represent the PACE program at our site down on South College Road. If you're familiar with Kings Grant, we're right across from Grace Baptist Church. But the PACE program is a very unique program. It's a program that states for Program of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly, and is a federal and state funded program. It is the ultimate goal to keep those loved ones at home with total care. We become their insurance and also the provider. But please do not hesitate to contact myself or come by our facility if you'd like a tour. But we do come right to the home and go in depth about the program. And on the table, you'll see a PowerPoint presentation that talks about each of our services. But I'm very proud to be here tonight. So thank you.
All right, and just a few housekeeping things if you're not familiar with the facility. If you need to use a restroom, it's down this hall, past the basketball courts, and then on your right, the men's and then the women's. And we do try to wrap things up around 7:30, just to give you an idea of the time. So I have the pleasure of introducing Beth Locke. She is the owner and occupational therapist with Quality Independence Therapy, a group that she started herself. She's been an occupational therapist for 20 years in a variety of settings, mostly in home health. She grew up in Maryland and attended Towson, is that how you say that? University of Baltimore. And she traveled the country as a travel therapist, lived in California for several years before realizing we have a much better coast and coming to Wilmington and settling here with her family. She created Quality Independence Therapy to provide occupational therapy in the home, primarily for seniors. So she really likes being able to go to the home, see the actual environment the person is living in, and how to really train them or teach them or help modify things so that they are living in the place that they are and doing that in a safe way. She also enjoys the way that helps her to get to know them on a more personal level and allows her to tailor the treatment activities to that real life environment. She's Passionate not just about getting clients stronger, more balanced, and more independent in their daily activities, but also helping them to re-engage in leisure activities that they've previously loved. She's a you've done triathlons before? Former triathlons. She's done other sports, so she's passionate about keeping people active. So join me in welcoming Beth Locke.
All right, I can't see myself, so okay, we're good. Okay, so thank you, Dorothy, for the introduction. Like Dorothy said, I am Beth Locke. I'm an occupational therapist, which begs the question, what in the heck is an occupational therapist? I get asked that question so many times, and what's the difference between an occupational therapist and a physical therapist? So first, what I'm going to do is kind of delve in a little bit into some definitions having to do with occupational therapy. Bear with me. There we go. Okay. Very good. So occupation. So no, I'm not going to help anybody get a job. Most people I'm working with don't want a job. Occupation is defined as the everyday activity that people do as individuals, in families, and with communities to occupy time and bring meaning and purpose to life. Occupations include things people need to, want to, and are expected to do. So I really like that definition because I like how it talks about as individuals, in families, and with communities. So we're really looking at the big picture here, not just, the one specific person and the one specific problem. As well as it talks about the things that people need to, want to, and are expected to do. So a lot of times when you see occupational therapy in some settings, it may just be focused on what somebody has to do to get by. And once they've met those goals, then they're done. So I really like to stay with my clients as long as possible to get them to do those higher level skills, more the things that they want to be able to do. I like to throw in this definition of health, which is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And the reason that I like that so much is because in occupational therapy, we're looking at all of your strengths and all of your weaknesses and how they play together. So we're going to try to improve any sort of impairments that you may have, but for those that can't be improved or perfected, then we're going to meet you where you're at. Okay, so that's why I like the part that says it's not the absence of disease. We're going to work with you even with the impairments that you have, and we're going to get you to be as functional as possible despite those impairments. And then the occupational therapy is the therapeutic use of everyday life occupations with persons, groups, or populations for the purpose of enhancing or enabling participation. I like to talk about that also because a lot of times when people think of therapy, any type of therapy, they think of, exercises. It's pretty rote, but that's really not what we're about. This talks about the fact that the occupations themselves are the therapy. So yes, we do exercises, but that's not the point. The exercises are supplemental. Really, the whole emphasis is the doing of the occupations. Okay. So the history of OT, I think, helps explain a little bit more about what we do and how we got here. And most people don't realize that OT actually started in mental health. Back in the early 1900s, with people dealing with mental health issues, they didn't know how to deal with them. They didn't have the medications we have now and the treatment techniques that we have now. So they would lock them away. And what they realized was, well, hey, they're not getting any better. In fact, a lot of times they're getting worse. So they decided to occupy them, which is really where that term came from. Let's give them some jobs around the facilities, or let's give them some arts and crafts activities and games that they can participate in and be occupied. And they realized, hey, they actually are starting to get better. We are seeing fewer behaviors out of them. And then over time, with the world wars happening and soldiers coming back with life-altering injuries, maybe they lost a limb or a traumatic brain injury or whatever, they applied the same principles. Let's occupy them. Let's give them something to do so that they're not just sitting in a hospital bed for months at a time. And they realized, hey, this person learned how to build a birdhouse, or this person learned how to anything, arts. It was a lot based on in arts and crafts. And so why don't we then try to teach them how to do more? And then that's how they started to learn to adapt for their impairments. And that's a huge part of what brought us to where we are today, is adapting for impairments, but also engaging in meaningful occupations. So this is the domain of OT. If you look at the left-hand side, the occupations listed there, it's activities of daily living. And those are the ones that I kind of mentioned before that you see a lot of OTs addressing. So that's taking a shower, using the toilet, getting dressed, brushing your teeth, combing your hair, things like that. The basic skills that you have to be able to do. And again, that's what you kind of see most of. If you were to see an OT in a hospital or maybe a nursing home, that's what they're going to probably focus on most of the time. And then we have instrumental activities of daily living, and those are some higher level skills like cooking, cleaning, pet care, money management, things like that, medication management and whatnot. Health management. Well, I just mentioned medication management is a big part of health management. Managing your doctor's appointments, understanding the diagnoses that you have, understanding why you're taking certain medications and things like that. Most people don't realize that OTs are really involved with that. They think, oh, that's the doctor, that's the nurse, but OTs can help with that as well. Rest and sleep, again, not something people necessarily think of OT as working on, but that is a big part of what we do because it's a huge part of wellness. Education, that's frequently more for the little ones, for kids. Pediatric OT is a huge portion of what occupational therapy is, and they really focus on making sure the kids can participate in school, even if they're severely impaired. Work, so we do, even though I said I'm not here to find anybody a job, it does look at work. We have people, OTs, that work in work hardening. So if you have an injury, if you have a manual labor job and you have an injury that you can no longer complete your job, there are work hardening clinics that will literally just retrain you for hours at a time how to get back to your job. As well as we have OTs that work in ergonomics, in corporate settings, things like that. Play, leisure, social participation. So those kind of, again, go back to things that you want to be able to do. And we're going to get into some studies here in a minute that show why those are so important. Context, environmental and personal. We're going to look at the big picture again. We're not just looking at, one person in one place at one time. When I get to know you, when I go into your home, I'm going to ask you questions about your past. And people are like, why are you asking me this? This has nothing to do with why I'm here right now, but I'm getting to know you as a person. And even though this isn't something you haven't done in a while, perhaps you enjoyed it in the past, and perhaps it can bring you joy again if we get you back to doing these things. So we look at habits and routines and roles and rituals, and then we look at all of the different skills, motor skills, process skills, social interaction skills, and things like that, and how those are playing into your ability to do all those occupations in those contexts that we've talked about. So I like to point this out because basically the scope of OT is huge. There's not a lot we really can't address. And again, people don't tend to understand exactly how wide our scope can be. I was talking to somebody the other day who was trying to understand, and he said, so you're like a subset, like a niched down version of physical therapy. And I said, no, we're actually the opposite. We're not niched down at all. PT is probably more niched down than we are. So that I don't have a slide for it, but the difference between physical and occupational therapy, that's a question that gets asked all the time. And my answer is typically, it really depends. It's going to depend on which therapists you're seeing, which settings you're seeing them in. Because you might have a shoulder injury and you go to a nursing home. It just depends. The PT or the OT could address that, but the PT, say, has taken more continuing education classes in shoulders than the OT has. They're going to give it to the PT. But there's a ton of overlap. So we can both address these injuries. We can both address balance. We both address activity tolerance. PT typically is focused more on mobility. OT is typically focused more on function. We say we put the fun in function. And I mean, that's really kind of it. Sometimes you'll see people say physical therapy does the lower body, occupational therapy does the upper body, but that's not always true. Some people say physical therapy is gross motor, occupational therapy is fine motor. Again, that's not always true. So those are kind of, it's pretty tough to break down what the difference is. But again, OT is really focused a lot more on the big picture of function. All right. So the importance of occupations. There's a whole bunch of studies. It's this slide and the next slide. They are based off of, well, most of them are based off of two bodies of data collection. And one is the Blue Zone study. Does anybody know what the Blue Zone study is? Okay, I see a couple no's. Please go on Netflix and watch the documentary. It's like a mini series on the Blue Zone. I think it's called How to Live to Be 100 or something like that. So basically what it is researchers identified these pockets of the earth. It's all over where people are living to be 100 more frequently, more successfully. And they went in and studied why. Why are these people more successful at aging? And it's very, very interesting because they go into some very rural areas where they have very little access to doctors and medicine. And yet these people are chopping wood at 100 years old. So it's really, really fascinating. But just a very brief summary is they found that the more people remain engaged in their occupations, the longer they lived a healthier life. The study suggests that finding joy and purpose in our daily occupations is not only vital for our mental and emotional well-being, but it can also have a profound impact on our physical health. And the study found that individuals who had a strong sense of fulfillment from their occupations were not only more likely to live longer, but they experienced lower rates of chronic diseases, such as heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. So all these other studies, or not all of them, there's some different ones on the next slide, but the next several studies all come from another kind of body of data that was collected for the, I would say, mess this up, the Rush University Memory and Aging Project. Yes, that's what it is. Which is basically Rush University went in, I think that's in Colorado, I'm not even sure, went into a continuum care community where they have everything from independent living to memory care and, very heavy level assisted care. And they started studying people as they came into the community when they didn't have diagnoses. I think the criteria was no stroke, Parkinson's, or dementia at baseline. And they started collecting all this data on them, and it followed them for years. I think it was a total of like 11 or 13 years, something like that, to see how they progressed. So there was a scale that they used for social activity, how often they were participating in social activity. I couldn't find the scale. I really tried. I dug as hard as I could to find that scale. I believe it was a 30-point scale, but I'm not 100% sure. But with each 1 point decrease in social activity on this scale was associated with 33% more rapid rate of decline in motor function, global motor function, and presenting as basically being 5 years older than they actually were, and 40% increased risk of death. So that's really significant right there. Just 1 point increase in being more socially active led to that drastic change in all these other areas. Another one, so basically they just had this huge body of data, and they went in and did all these different research studies. They pulled the data out different ways. They said the risk of developing disability in the activities of daily living that we talked about decreased by 43% for each additional unit of social activity. So again, that's kind of going the other direction. The association of social activity with cognitive decline. Sorry, I put a lot of words in here. The global cognitive decline was reduced by an average of 70% in persons who were frequently socially active. So again, really huge numbers that they found in these studies. They had another measure that was the purpose in life measure, and they found that people were 2.4 times more likely to remain free of assistive device than a person with a lower score. And that's kind of it from those studies. And then moving on, just more physically, the muscle mass. I don't know if everybody knows this. Brace yourself. People start to lose their muscle mass around the age of 30. That's really young. So get moving. And it declines at a rate of 3 to 8% per decade, but then it's compounded. So the older we get, the faster we lose muscle mass. And if we're sedentary, it's even faster. So a really huge reason just to be active and moving your body. Another study found that activity itself, they looked at the difference between productive activity and non-productive. So productive could be working or volunteering, or I think it was caregiving. I forget all the different categories, or just leisure activities, just things you're doing for fun. There's no really good other reason for it. It said it doesn't matter. It's shown to have a positive effect on well-being outcomes either way, which is good to know because some people feel like they have to be productive, and this study is telling us you don't. Another interesting one I found was that older people do not see themselves as old or do not report being treated as old as long as they are active in some meaningful way. And then just one last study just found engaging in some leisure activities such as clubs, hobbies, baking, and cooking was associated with reduced depression. So lots and lots of reasons in all of those studies to remain engaged in your occupations. And again, it doesn't always matter what kind of occupation it is. The biggest thing is that it's meaningful. And lots of effects on the cognitive, social, emotional, and physical. So I like some quotes in here. I'm a quote person. Some common quotes that define OT, and I really like the first one by Mary Riley. You may be familiar. This kind of really just defines what OT is. Man, through the use of his hands, as they are energized by mind and will, can influence the state of his own health. So basically, through the use of his hands, doing things as they are energized by mind and will. So things that are meaningful to you, you can influence the state of your own health. And that really is what OTs strive to teach people. Some of you may have heard idle hands are the devil's playground. If you don't use it, you lose it. If you rest, you rest. You don't stop playing because you get old. You get old because you stop playing. Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I remember. Involve me and I learn. That's a big one for me because part of what I find when I go out to work with somebody with a family or somebody that has a caregiver, part of what I have to do is tell the caregiver to back off a little because they just want to do for the person, and they just need to be more involved. They want to be more involved, and they can do more sometimes than they're allowed to do, really. I really like the last one. You treat a disease, you win, you lose. You treat a person, I guarantee you win, no matter what the outcome. Anybody know what that's from? It's from Patch Adams. It's a great movie. Okay, so all these reasons to remain engaged, but why do sometimes people stop? You find a lot of older people sitting in their recliners watching their TVs, and obvious reasons: pain, fatigue, losing their balance, having falls, or even a fear of falling. I have a client right now, she's never fallen. She had a stroke like 8+ years ago. She's never fallen, but she is terrified to fall. And sometimes that fear can actually cause a fall. People have decreased vision, decreased hearing, decreased sensation. Neuropathy is a huge problem for a lot of people, and depression and anxiety. So we work on those things in two main ways. One is to improve and the other is to adapt. So improve would be, this is where we tend to overflow a lot with physical therapy. So we're gonna work on strengthening and stretching and balance training and building endurance and coordination training and things like that. So we're gonna elevate those skills so that you're more successful as much as we can. But we don't have a magic wand and we can't fix everything as much as we would like to, and we try. So we adapt. And this is where we really stand apart from physical therapy, is that I have a whole table behind me and a whole bunch of slides towards the end of adaptive tools. And that's the fun part, if you ask me, teaching people to do things in a new way. You have to have a bit of an open mind. You've put on your socks by bending over to your foot every day since you were born, since you were 2. And now I'm asking you to do it a different way. And a lot of people, put on the brakes and don't want change. But if you can have an open mind, we can find a way for you to do it. So we use adaptive equipment. We do home modifications. We teach people how to simplify tasks, break things down into really, really tiny baby steps. We look at energy conservation, doing things in a new way so that it doesn't exhaust you. Something I hear a lot from people is, well, I can get up and get dressed and brush my teeth and go to the bathroom and make breakfast, but then I'm done for the day. I'm exhausted. So we teach people to do things a little bit differently, break things up differently so that they can actually then go out and do more meaningful activities once they've gotten ready for their day. And smart technology is a big piece of what we do also. I do a lot of teaching people to use Instacart and Alexa and their Apple Watches or even just their phones, things like that. We'll go into that more in a little bit. Pardon me while I grab a drink. So, home modifications. So when we come in to meet you for the first time, I'm going to do a really thorough assessment of your home. Sometimes it might seem nosy because I want to look at your bedroom, your bathroom, your kitchen, your laundry room, any entrances or exits that you use, where you sit in the living room. I want to see all of it. Your closet even, your pantry, because I want to see where your trip hazards are, your fall hazards. I want to see what needs improved lighting. I have adaptive door handles on there. People with arthritis have a hard time grabbing around doorknob. There's a lot of different door handles that you can put on. Ramps and grab bars. Some people are like, grab bars, that makes me look old. No, thank you. But there are a lot of very decorative grab bars nowadays. So there's different ways to put them up so that they don't look so hospital-esque. Obviously, like I said, looking for trip hazards and whether or not you need a seat for the shower. Improving lighting is a big piece of it. Some people keep their home very, very dark. And as we get older, our vision is not as good. So sometimes just adding some night lights along the hallway or a motion activated night light in the bedroom for when you get up to go to the bathroom at night, things like that. Sometimes we need to mark things with brightly colored tape, which I have some I'll show in a while. We need to widen doorways so that they can fit a walker or a wheelchair through. We can elevate sitting surfaces. It's much, much easier to get up from a higher seat. Some people are very, very attached to their chairs. But you can just add blocks underneath chairs a lot of times, or couches or beds, so that they're a little bit higher and easier to get up from. And I talked about energy conservation, and that's one of the ways we conserve energy. Even if you're just saving the tiniest bit of energy every time you stand, that adds up to a lot over the course of a day. Removing glass shower doors is a big piece of it. Glass shower doors are rarely helpful. So better to just take them down, put up a tension rod with a curtain, and it makes everyone safer and makes it a lot easier for a caregiver to be able to help you with your shower. Threshold covers and ramps. So even if it's just a very small threshold, it's still a trip hazard for some people. So there's threshold ramps that just go up just enough to get you over that threshold without being a big giant ramp. So those are just some examples. There's obviously way more things that we can do for home modifications. So back to energy conservation. Oh, I'm sorry, Dorothy.
Now, some people may have the question of what of this could be covered by insurance,
Yeah.
or so that might be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, for home modifications, not a ton of it is covered by insurance. Really, the only thing for a bathroom is a bedside commode that can go over a toilet so that you're elevating the height of the toilet. Even shower seats aren't covered. Ramps.
I was going to say some long-term care policies do have like a reimbursement option for things that aren't covered by Medicare.
And if you're a veteran, the VA is really, really good about coming in and making modifications for you. there are some churches, I was just talking to somebody today about, there's a whole bunch of different churches and things like that, or like Eagle Scouts and whatnot, who may come in and put in a ramp for you. I would just say, if you're going to go that route where it's a volunteer group versus somebody who is licensed, make sure if they're going to put a ramp in, make sure it's the right pitch, because I see a lot of really steep ramps that are really unsafe.
The PACE program also, someone's under repair.
Okay.
Need a grant, they did.
I did not know that. Go ahead.
Warm, they do ramps and they meet the guidelines, and those are retirees, professional construction builders a lot of times.
Yeah, Warm is great. Yeah, and Habitat for Humanity. Yeah, there's a few organizations out there.
You can share some of those resources so the streaming audience can hear that too. Just some of what they said, the Warm and the.
Oh, yeah, Warm and PACE. If you're a member of PACE, they can come in. Warm, for anybody who doesn't know, Wilmington area.
Rebuilding ministry.
Yeah, thank you. Rebuilding ministry, and they go into, I think it's mostly just low income homes.
Well,
No,
no.
my impression was low income homes where they have to be underneath a certain
Well, you fill out
threshold.
an application and
Right.
something like-
Yeah.
you just-
Fill out an application and they will come in and do some modifications. Not even just modifications, but if the home is in disrepair, they can help put some of those repairs in place. Yeah. Okay, so energy conservation is a big thing that I talk about with my clients. It doesn't matter really why you're being seen, but a lot of times people with a heart condition or a lung condition, they get tired very, very quickly. But like I said, as we age, we lose our muscle mass and we just get tired through that. So I encourage people to sit when they can. And sometimes people don't realize that there's more opportunities to sit down than they have thought about, because it's not part of their normal routine. So even if it's just pulling up a bar stool to the sink while you're doing your dishes, or to the stove while you're, standing and stirring, or not, they're sitting and stirring, hopefully. Weight shifting is actually a really good way to preserve your energy and not get fatigued as quickly. So what I tell people is, even if you're washing dishes, again, if you want to open your cabinet that's below the sink and just put your foot up, I know nobody can really see what I'm doing, but put one foot up on that bottom of the cabinet and then switch feet every so often. They do have those fatigue resistant mats that some people put in their kitchen. Just have to make sure it's, not going to slide on the floor, and that you're balanced, because they're kind of squishy. So if you have bad balance, they can be hard to walk on. Using the adaptive equipment, and again, we'll get into that a lot more. Plan out your entire task first. So when you think, okay, I'm going to bake a cake, stop and think about every single step that's going to go into baking that cake, and think about, where can I build in a rest break? Okay, I'm going to collect all my ingredients and set them on the counter, and I'm going to go sit down for half an hour. And then I'm going to come back and mix everything together and preheat the oven. Then I'm going to go sit down for 10 minutes. And then I'm going to come back and, think about the entire task in advance, break it down into steps, and build in some of these rest breaks. Gather all your supplies ahead of time. So if you're going to do a cleaning task, you might want to just make sure you've got all your cleaning supplies in one place, and you didn't forget the Windex in the bathroom down the hall, and you have to go get it and come back. And and in the kitchen, same thing. I've got to run over here to the pantry, and then to the kitchen or the refrigerator, and then back to the pantry. Plan it all out, gather everything you need at one time. Again, plan in your rest breaks. Leave frequently used items in easy to reach places, which is usually going to be shoulder to waist high. So if you have a favorite pan, don't put it in your cabinet down below, because you're just going to waste energy every time you have to reach down there, put it away and take it back out. Same with if you have, heavy mixing bowls or something, don't put it way up high where you have to reach up all the time to get to it. Again, think about it like a budget. Say you have a $100 budget for the day, and every time you reach up or reach down, that's $1 out of your budget. It adds up. It seems insignificant at the time, but it really does add up over the course of a day. Don't overschedule yourself. I see a lot of that where people are like, oh, I'm going to be out, so I'm going to do X, Y, Z and all these different things since I'm out of the house. I'm just get it all taken care of. And then they're exhausted for 3 days after that. So sometimes you're better off just going out and doing one errand a day, Shower and lay out your clothes in advance for a busy day. So if you know you have 2 doctor's appointments the next day, go ahead and get that shower, get everything prepared the night before, so that you don't have to do much of anything else besides the doctor's appointments or whatever you have. And ordering online, or if you can't order online, if you're getting something that you don't know for sure they have, call ahead and make sure they have it, so you're not going to show up at a store and not be able to get what you need, and that's a big waste of energy. But just basically be looking, it's kind of a mind frame thing. Just be looking for ways that you can save your energy. Most of us just go about our day the same way all the time and don't really think about where we're wasting our energy. Okay, OT and dementia. So I hear a lot, my mom, she's never going to be able to learn how to do that again because she has pretty advanced dementia. She doesn't even recognize who I am. But OT is not all just about training somebody to do something for themselves. A lot of what we do is caregiver training. So for somebody with moderate to severe dementia, caregiver training is mostly what we're going to be doing. For more mild dementia, I talked about task simplification. So our OTs are very skilled at breaking things down into teeny tiny steps. I remember when I was in school, we were asked to list out how many steps are in making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I don't remember the number, but it's insane. There's hundreds of steps if you really break it down small enough. So that's what we can do is break it down. And sometimes we use something called backwards chaining, where I might do 99 of the 100 steps, but I let the person do that 100th step. And then they have a sense of satisfaction, of completion. They were successful in completing a task. Even though I did most of it, they finished it. And then sometimes you can then start to back it off. The next time you do that, you only do 98 steps and then 97 steps. And they actually can start to relearn how to do things, depending on where they're at in their dementia journey. Also, just using a lot of labels can be very helpful, using lists that they can see easily, calendars, and again, Alexa, setting up timers and reminders and things like that. I like to talk about positive approach to care. That's Teepa Snow is actually an OT, and she is kind of considered a dementia guru. She's lots of free YouTube videos. That's why I like to talk about hers, because they're free videos that anybody can access, and they're just very interesting to see what she is able to get people to do using her approach. So her approach talks about sitting or crouching by a person, because if I'm a person with dementia sitting down and my caregiver comes and leans over me and talks down on me, that doesn't feel very good. And it can be frightening. Using very simple commands, talking slowly, using a low tone of voice. People don't hear the higher tones a lot of times. Avoid using baby talk, because they're not babies, but it can be, in the moment, it can be hard. I kind of sometimes catch myself occasionally saying, okay, you gotta talk like they're an adult, because they are. Tell the person each step, and that's something I see a lot with caregivers, whether it's a family member or a paid caregiver, is they'll say, okay, we're going to take a shower. And they feel like, well, they just told them what we're doing. But you have to say, okay, I'm going to get the washcloth wet. Okay, I'm going to wash your face. I'm going to put it in your hands. I'm literally tell them every single step, because again, their vision might not be good. So they can't necessarily see what's going on as well. And it just helps them be able to expect what's happening. And again, breaking down these tasks into tiny little steps. Another thing Teepa Snow talks about is the hand-underhand approach. One of the videos I like that she does is with self-feeding. And the caregiver comes in and tries to help by grabbing over. And that can be, again, very frightening and intimidating when you see these hands coming at your face. But she shows how to kind of hold underneath, as well as the utensil, the feeding utensil. And then you don't have these hands coming at you, and it's a lot less frightening and can be really helpful in getting people to cooperate with you. Again, incorporating activities from younger years. So really get to know who this person was when they were a kid or a young adult, and try to incorporate as much of that as possible, because those are the things that they remember. They don't necessarily remember when they were, 60. And remember, the tasks don't need to be functional. And that, I think, is another really big one for caregivers to have a hard time with grasping. Well, I'm not going to put a puzzle in front of her because she's not going to be able to put it together. But is she going to sit there and look at it, move the puzzles and move the pieces around? If that's something that brings her joy, then by all means, let her do that. And then the last thing I have on there is OTs are really good at developing sensory diets. So some people really like really loud, fast music. Some people get very overstimulated and can't handle that. Same thing with, people with enjoying different temperatures, deep touch, so massage and stuff like that. Some people it's really great, and some people are very averse to it and don't want anything to do with it. So that's one of the things that we look at when dealing with somebody with more moderate to advanced dementia is what makes them feel good and how can we incorporate these things throughout the day. So more on caregiver training. Environmental setup is a big thing, especially with people with dementia. The picture I have on here is like a sink with nothing on it. And that was very intentional that I chose that, because a lot of times you go into a bathroom and the sink and has all these different products on it. And you say, okay, it's time to brush your teeth. And they can't find the toothbrush or the toothpaste. So sometimes it's a matter of getting rid of all of the things that aren't absolutely necessary, or taking out whatever product they need at that time and putting it back, and then taking out the next product so that they don't get overwhelmed. I talked about labeling things. Sometimes for if you're going to have soap and lotion on the sink, take off the labels that it came in and just put a label that says soap and lotion. I accidentally put lotion on my hands the other day when I was trying to wash them. So it's a very easy mistake to make. So caregiver training, also training on this adaptive equipment that I keep promising we'll get to. Transfer training is a big piece of it, because as people get older and they get a little bit more weak and have a hard time getting up, there's some really dangerous ways to do it. And I see, people pulling on people's arms a lot, trying to get them out of bed, and you're grabbing by the back of the head to sit them up. That can be really hard on the neck, things like that. So we can talk about some safer ways to do that. And then home exercise program training. So any therapist that comes into the house should be leaving some sort of written handout, even if it's for somebody with dementia who isn't going to follow that written handout. The caregiver should be trained in how to help them. All right, so transfer training. There's a lot of different things to know about transfer training. So I will just say, to be able to know that you're safe with it, just have somebody come in and help you with it, because I'm going to go over some things, but there's just too many details in it to really be safe with it. But some equipment that's available to you. We've got a Hoyer lift. That's the guy that's in the sling that's totally suspended. That's for somebody who's really dependent with transfers and just really can't bear much weight through their legs. Those can be really great for some people and really terrible for some people. Some people don't tolerate being in that position. Some people are terrified to be hanging like that. As you can kind of see, the device is really large, so you need space if you're going to have one of these in your home. So it's not for everybody. Similarly, there's the sit to stand over here. These are really great. They're still really big. You still need a lot of space, but this is going to help somebody get into a standing position where their knees are basically blocked, so their knees can't buckle. And it's on wheels, so you can stand them up from the wheelchair, unlock the wheels, push them over to the toilet, and lower them into a seated position on the toilet. Again, you're not in that suspended position, so it's a lot more comfortable usually. You kind of want to have somebody who can follow directions to be able to participate in doing one of these. The one over here with the circle in the middle, that's called a Beezy board. I'll talk about real quick. This is just a basic slide board, and these can be really, really great for somebody who can't stand all the way up. And I will kind of demonstrate real quick. I'm going to turn this. Can you still see me? Yes. Okay. So basically, say this is like a wheelchair and a bed, any two surfaces really that you need to transfer between. I'm going to put this board down as a bridge. So if I'm sitting on the edge of the bed, thank you. A little bit more. Yeah. I'm going to lean the person, if they can't do it themselves, hopefully they can do it themselves. Lean them away, slide the board kind of under the thigh and the butt cheek. These chairs are slippery, so it might move a little bit. And I'm just going to scoot myself across. Now, some people can use this themselves and scoot themselves across. I have a couple clients that I use this with right now where I put them on a chuck, like a fabric one, not the paper ones. And I just use that to help scoot their butt across. If they're not wearing clothes, you can put like a pillowcase on the board itself so that their skin doesn't stick to it. Let's see, I've got 2 pictures of gait belts up here. The one in blue is really nice because it has several handles. So you've got some places to really grab onto somebody. Pants are also really important. Sometimes they're like, oh, I'm just going to stay in my nightgown, which is fine for comfort. But sometimes those pants can help us kind of manipulate where they're going. This is the gait belt I carry, which is the same one that's pictured up there. And there's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't have any handles, so there's fewer places to grab on, but it does the job. It's a little bit more complicated to fasten. Some of these fancier ones like the blue one have more like the clips that are really easy to release and whatnot and clip together. And then various shower seats and bath equipment. The one I have up here, that's intense. Very few people I've seen have these, but they're great. They're really an amazing product where it's kind of hard to see just from the picture what all it does. The seat, you can see it tilts and it has leg rests and it's in the tub right now, but you release a lever and it slides across that bridge to the outside piece. Now you can then take that bridge out and now it's basically a toilet seat if you want it to be, and you can roll that piece over the toilet. It has a bucket in it right now. You can take that out and roll it over a toilet, or you can just take it and roll it back into their bedroom, wherever you need to take them. So those are for some really low-level patients. I'm trying to think of who I've seen around here pay for that. In California, the VA paid for those. VA and Medicaid paid for those. I don't think Medicaid pays for that here.
How much are they normally?
$3,000 to $5,000. Yeah, something like that. And the sit to stand transfer is, I think, usually $3,000. But if anybody's looking for one, I know somebody selling one for much, much cheaper. I forget how much she said, but secondhand. All right. So the next slide I have on here is performing a stand pivot transfer, because again, this is where I see a lot of things going wrong. The person has to be able to bear some weight in their legs. It's really helpful if they can follow some directions, but not everybody does. So this is not my own. I kind of put the credit down there to Bethany Children's Health Center. I just Googled handout for this, and this is what I came up with. So Chelsea is going to come up here and be my guinea pig as I kind of demonstrate this. So you can just sit here, and I am going to put my gait belt around her. Because this is really important to talk about, because this is a really big area where people get their own back injuries as a caregiver. And if you as a caregiver have a back injury, and then your person you're caring for is really up a creek. So position the wheelchair parallel or at a slight angle to the destination. I have a lot of people ask me why you don't have them facing. That's a much bigger space for them to have to turn. I think people feel more comfortable with this because there's something in front of them that they could fall forward onto. But then they've got all this space back here that they could fall backwards onto. So you really want to try your best to have kind of an angle. Lock the brakes on the wheelchair if it's a wheelchair. Remove the footrests. Put on the gait belt and assist the person to scoot forward in the chair. So Chelsea's going to scoot forward. Block the patient's knees with your knees. Now that's going to depend a little bit on the kind of strength that they have. A lot of times what I'll do is actually put my knees and my feet between there. So I'm blocking at least one knee. So if the other one buckles, they're still not going to go anywhere. And then pivot your feet to direct the patient's bottom. Did I skip a step on there? Oh, yes. Place hand on patient's gait belt. Maintain a straight back and shift your weight backwards. So that's the important part to think about, is that you're not lifting up. Okay, so I'm going to just reach in here and I'm going to lift. I leaned backwards with my whole body so that it's kind of like a counterweight, as opposed to leaning over this way and trying to lift, because that's where you're going to get a back injury. Okay. So hang on to that handout in there. And if you're ever in a situation, like I said, it's best just to make sure, have somebody come check you out, make sure you're doing it the right way. And thank you to Chelsea for being a good role model. Okay.
Do you need anything?
No, thank you so much. Your duties are done. I'll pay you later. Okay, so I've mentioned Alexa a number of times, and I've had so many clients who, obviously everyone kind of knows what they are, but never really thought how it could be beneficial to them. So this is a list of ways it can be beneficial specifically for seniors. Regular and emergency phone calls. So it really can be used as I've fallen and I can't get up. And I should say, some of these depend on the type of Alexa that you purchase, because not all of them are going to have all of these functions. Medication reminders. I have a lot of clients who will just set times and say, yep, take time to take your medicine. Doctor appointment reminders, family member drop-ins. That can be really helpful. And then the Care Hub is an interesting function. I've not actually seen any of my clients use it, and I had to look up what exactly it is. But basically, it's part of the app. So if you set it up that I am a caregiver for somebody, it will alert you when they use their Alexa. It's not going to tell you specifics where you're being nosy about their life. It's not going to tell you exactly what, if they said, Alexa, look up, whatever. It's not going to tell you what they looked up, but it'll say what function that they use. And it's basically a way for a caregiver to know my person's alive. They're using the Alexa, so clearly they're doing okay right now. And then, of course, if you set it up so that you're the caregiver, if they do use it for an emergency, it will let you know immediately that an emergency had happened. Obviously, it's good for audiobooks and listening to the news. The ones with the screens are great for photo sharing. I do have some clients that have those, and they just absolutely love it because they get new pictures of the grandkids all the time, and that just brings them so much joy. Smart home features, if you get it set up properly. Alexa, turn off the light. Make your life a lot easier. Again, setting alarms, making lists, even if it's just a basic to-do list. Burglar deterrent, I didn't know this one, but you can set up your Alexa where you say, Alexa, I'm leaving the house. And then if she hears noise, especially something like glass breaking or whatever, then it'll automatically call for help. Captioning, show and tell, those things can only be used on the ones that have screens, but will actually, if you are having a call with somebody, it will put captions on there if you're hard of hearing, which is really nice. And show and tell is if you have visual deficits, you can hold something up and ask her what you're holding, and she will tell you what you're holding. And then online grocery shopping, Alexa, put milk on my grocery list. Alexa, ask Instacart to send me some milk, things like that. Okay, so now we're going to talk a lot more about all these adaptive equipment pieces. I have a lot here. Some of these things that I had, some of them are duplicates, but some of them I try to put things that you may not know as much about. So most people know about a standard shower seat, and a lot of people still know about the tub transfer bench, which is longer and two legs sit on the outside. You sit down and slide across. This one I have up here, actually the seat moves back and forth. So if somebody can't slide themselves across, their caregiver can unclip it, slide the whole seat across. Some of them come with a swivel seat. This one doesn't. So there's always variations. The next one up there, some people just really love their backs. They can't give up sitting in the tub, but getting up and down from that floor is really difficult. So this functions similarly where those white flaps on the side fold down. You can still sit on it from the outside and swing your legs into the tub. And then you've got that remote and it will lower you all the way down into the tub and you can soak in your bath. Those are not as expensive as I would have thought. I think $300 maybe. So not outrageous. Okay, so these are things to help with gripping. And I did I meant to order some and I didn't. So I went to Home Depot and I bought some pipe insulation. I did have to trim it down a little bit, but this thing was like, I don't know, 5-6 feet long for $1.75. So you can get a lot of use out of that. So I have a pen and a fork, and I will go ahead and pass some of these things around, but obviously it just makes things bigger. So people with arthritic hands or people with neuropathy in their hands makes it really difficult. You can hold on to these. They're a little squishy, so they're a little easier on your hands, as well as it's just bigger. You don't have to have as fine of a pinch. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start everything with you. The next thing there is called a universal cuff, and that you could just strap this thing around your hand, and there's a lot of variations of these too. And then you can put anything you want where the toothbrush is. So again, you could put a writing utensil in there, you could put a toothbrush, you could put a feeding utensil, things like that. And you don't have to grasp at all. You can use it with, an open hand or whatever you have available to you. I like to do this slide because elevated toilet seats are kind of a hot topic where I don't want that. It's going to make me feel old. I have guests coming over. I'm not going to make them sit on it, things like that. So the very first one on there is what a lot of people get because it's the most available at like CVS and Walgreens and things like that. That's the one I don't like. So I tell people not to get that one unless you don't have a choice. That's hooked onto the seat by a very small plastic clasp. Not always the most secure. People don't find it comfortable, is what I've been told. So the next option there, this is a little bit more invasive. You have to remove your whole toilet and put this platform down and then put your whole toilet back on top. So it's just your regular toilet. It's just lifted up a few inches. That's not conducive for everybody. They're not going to be able to do all that. So the last one is what I really prefer because you just remove the seat, which I'm happy to do for my clients because it's very easy, though I will not remove a whole toilet. You remove the seat, you put the platform there down, and it comes with long bolts, and you just screw it all right back on. Very simple to do. The armrests on there are removable because some people don't like feeling closed in, but some people really need that. So you can remove those if you want to or leave them on. But that's typically the one I recommend for my clients. One important thing to know about toilet seats is make sure you pay attention to whether or not you have a round or elongated toilet because it's very easy to order the wrong thing. These are all adaptive feeding things. So that's an adaptive cutting board. You can see they've got ways to clamp things down. The carrot is sitting on top of a blade where you just, drag the carrot across the blade. So if you only have one hand available to you, you can still prepare all your food. It's got this, the thing in the corner. I don't cook. Grater. So you can, grate cheese and stuff like that over there, whatever you need to be able to do. And again, this is another thing that there's a million different variations of things that you can find. Some of them have just a block in the corner so you can have things stabilized against that. Some of them have just a nail sticking up, which seems unsafe, but obviously, if you're doing this with one hand, you're being extra careful. But you can put an apple on top of that and chop the apple and it's not going to move around. The next thing is a rocker knife. So if you don't have two hands that you can use to stabilize and cut your food, you just put that rocker knife down, rock it back and forth, and it's going to cut through your food for you. And the next thing is a plate guard. So again, if you're one-handed and you're trying to pick up some peas as pictured there, they're just going to roll off the plate. So you can buy plates that do have a built-up side, or you can buy a plate guard like this. And it's really handy because it just comes on and off and you can switch plates, and they're pretty flexible so they can go on different size plates and things like that. So some adaptive writing utensils. There's a lot of different options out there for writing utensils, but here's two of them. The first set up there is called a pen again, and that I do have here to show. So again, if you can make a fit or make a pinch, but maybe it's weak or maybe it hurts. You can slide your finger through the hole, and it just gives you some more stability while you write. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this around. Try it out. And the next one there, I'm going to blank on the name of that because I don't use it very often. But it's very heavy. It's a weighted device. And obviously you put the pen in there and you just move your whole hand to write. It's not super ideal, but if it gets you to be able to sign your name where otherwise you couldn't, then it's a good option. One other option that some people do if they really can't write is they get a stamp with their name, which works too. Okay, so the first set of pictures over there is something called a hip kit. It used to be when you got a hip replacement, you weren't allowed to bend past 90 degrees. They don't do hip replacements like that anymore very often, so it's kind of a moot point. But the whole thing was that they had to develop some tools so that people could take care of their lower body without bending over. And I do have, I think, everything up there here. So they've got elastic shoelaces, a long-handled sponge, a reacher, a dressing stick, a long-handled shoehorn, and a sock aid. I'm going to grab all of these here. Oh, and I have one extra. Okay. So I can teach somebody how to completely take care of their feet without ever bending over. I have them pictured later, so I won't spoil it. But elastic shoelaces, a lot of shoes like Skechers and whatnot come with these days, but they didn't used to be so readily available. So if you have a pair of shoes that tie, you can just buy a pair of elastic shoelaces and replace them. Tie them up one time, it turns your shoe into a slip-on shoe. Obviously, a long-handled sponge, pretty self-explanatory. You can wash your feet with it. You can wash your back with it. I don't have a reacher. Everyone knows what a reacher is, or most people call them a grabber. But we use them a lot for putting on pants. And there's a little tiny knob at the very end of it that I teach people to use that to take their sock off. Don't use the plastic C part because those break very easily. But those are used for a million different things. You can use reachers to pick up things you dropped on the floor and be creative with it. A lot of people don't know, and not all of them have it, but some of them have a magnetic tip at the very end. So if you dropped a pin on the floor, you can pick it up with the magnet that's in it. A dressing stick, this funny looking thing, can also be used to kind of hook and pull your pants up. It can also be used if you're putting on a shirt, an open front shirt, and you can't get your other hand into that sleeve. You can use that and bring it around for your bad arm if you have one. But again, pretty versatile. You can use it to grab whatever you need. And then it has a small hook on the other side.
Can I use it towards a grandchild that I'm in the school?
Yes. They're really great for hitting kids with, snagging kids with. I like to show the sock aid because there's a learning curve to this, and some people try it one time and it's not great, and they're like, no, I'm not gonna use that. But these can be really, really helpful. I already have the sock on here, and you just drop the sock aid down in front of you. I'm sorry, you can't see this online. And you just pull, and my sock is on. So really, really, really helpful device. If you wear socks here in North Carolina, fewer and fewer people wear socks, especially in the summertime. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on, and I will just, the one other thing that's not pictured up there that I happen to have simply because a patient gave it to me because she didn't need it any longer is a leg lifter. So if you are having a hard time swinging your legs into bed or into the car, if you have the option, if you want to put it on your wrist, you don't have to. You put your foot through there and you just help the leg up. So those can be really helpful. So I'll pass all these around. Show and tell. Okay. The next thing on there, I don't have one, but those are, you can look them up under various names. I think car cane is one of them, or just car transfer handle. This is like a made or as seen on TV thing. So you can find these in a lot of really random stores, but put that metal hook into the slot that your car door hooks onto, and it gives you something to push up from when you go to transfer in and out of the car. Gives people something to feel secure about, because a lot of times when they're doing a car transfer, they're kind of looking for a place to put their hands, and that gives them a good spot, and you just pull it out when you're done with it. The other important thing to know about this is that it'll break windows. So if you were in a situation where your car got underwater, you can get out. So some safety things. The next tool is one of my favorites. It's a button hook. So if you have difficulties using your fingers, you can take this hook, you're going to slide it through the hole, snag the button, and pull it back through. The other side of it is a zipper pull, tiny little hook here. So on your zipper, it has a little tiny hole on the end of it usually. You can hook it through there and pull it up so you don't have to pinch that tiny little zipper. So really helpful.
Where did you get those?
Amazon. Amazon. Everything's from Amazon. $8, I believe. So very cheap item, but very, very handy. So that's.
That's, by the way, you can get the reachers at Harbor Freight for like $3.50.
Yes, Harbor Freight. What was that?
What is this one for again?
That is a dressing stick. So you can use it if you drop a pair of pants onto the floor, you can kind of hook it with that and pull it up, or you can hook the belt loop with it. You can, if you have an open front shirt and you have a hard time getting that second arm through, you can push it. You can put the hook back and catch it and pull it around. There's really a lot of uses for it. Truthfully, you can use that to take your socks off, to push the sock down off your heel. So versatile. The next thing up here is actually just called a switch. That can be hooked up to certain devices to activate them. So if you really don't have much motor control, again, it only works with certain devices, but you can hit the button and it'll activate things. So there's very, very sophisticated feeding devices where you can hit a button and the device will bring a spoon up to where your mouth is, things like that. It can also be hooked up to communication devices. So if you have somebody who understands but can't speak, you can set it up to yes and no, or you can set up some of their favorite activities and they can just hit a button so that they can communicate with you. The next two things are gardening tools, just adaptive gardening tools. So a rake there with an extra handle on it so that it's a little bit easier to handle, a little bit easier to pull back on. And then the other gardening tools with the adaptive handle so that you don't have to be digging at this awkward angle every time you use it. You can just maintain this neutral wrist and still do your gardening. There's a tool for everything. So it used to be when Apple products first came out, there was an app for everything. My slogan is, there's a tool for that. So some cooking devices. This is going to hold your spoon and stir. So that can be really handy if you don't want to stand there and stir. The next one will hold your pot still. Again, this isn't about lazy people, though. These are about people who can't do these things. So, you put your pot on the stove, and if you only have one hand and you don't want it to move around while you're trying to stir, it can do that. You can do that. The next one is super handy, is the one-touch can opener. I have one. If you don't have one, you're missing out. They're the best things in the world. But cranking on a can opener can be really, really hard on the hands. This is the one I said, oh, never mind. I have a slide for that. Long-handled nail clippers, long-handled razor, long-handled brush and comb. Anyone want to take a guess on the last one? That's a bottom buddy. That's for wiping your butt. So there's actually a little clamp at the end, and you can clamp the toilet paper in there, wrap it around, and reach your butt more easily. So there's a tool for everything. So that's an adaptive feeding device. So if you don't have the strength to bring your whole arm up, that'll help you with that. Some adaptive card devices. If it's hard, you really enjoy playing cards, but it's hard to hold your hand there. Some alternatives. The other one on there is, I'm going to blank on the name of it, but that is for people with tremors. Because if you've ever watched somebody with a severe tremor try to feed themselves, it's darn near impossible. So that actually has a microchip in it. That is actually a tiny little computer that learns your tremor and will adapt for it. There's videos if you want to look it up of people trying to eat before and then trying to eat with it, and it's amazing the way it adapts for the tremor and allows people to feed themselves. Some medication dispensers. The first one is a little bit more sophisticated. You can load that up, I think, for 30 days, and it will just dispense automatically at certain times. The next one, so that's a couple $100, and I think a monthly subscription as well. The next one is $75, I think, on Amazon. And again, you can set it up for 30 days and it'll dispense at certain times. But I think with the first one, there's certain extra things that it can do. I know there's some of them where if you don't go and remove the medication, it'll alert your caregiver, things like that. I meant to remove that picture of the Alexa. And then there's that pen there is a reader. So you run that pen along the page, kind of like a highlighter or a marker, and it will actually read to you. So people who are visually impaired. Yeah. I put up there the North Carolina Assistive Technology Program is based here in Wilmington. The guy who runs it is Jay Medlicott. He is fantastic. So if some of you have never met him, if you go in there, he's got all the different devices, but he has a brain full of knowledge about not just devices, but different apps and different programs and how they all work, and he can train people on how to use them. I mean, he's got, I can't even explain to you how much stuff he has there, and he'll loan it out. It's not a program to give it out, but he'll let you borrow it for 2 weeks at a time. And then there's always the Division of Services for the Blind and for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. So those divisions, this is all through the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. Those two divisions also have some other devices that they can give out to you if you qualify for blind or deaf or hard of hearing. Okay, so big question. Dorothy already sort of asked it. Does Medicare cover this? Medicare covers occupational therapy. Yes. Again, all those devices, no. They might maybe cover the slide board, maybe, if you don't already have another assistive device. But for the most part, they don't cover any of that stuff, unfortunately, which is why I say Amazon. A lot of times you can go buy a lot of this stuff at CVS or Walgreens. They tend to be a little bit more expensive.
And some insurance cover it. I had a client that was able to get the sliding board through their insurance.
Yes. Well, especially some of the Advantage plans nowadays come with an allowance, a monthly allowance for things that they can buy over the counter. Sometimes there's a catalog they have to order out of, and sometimes there's a little bit more freedom with it. So that's kind of just more like a pot of money, and you can do what you want with it within reason, within certain guidelines. Yeah. But as far as occupational therapy goes, Medicare and most commercial insurance cover these services as long as the client is making progress, as long as you have functional, achievable goals, as in, I can't just go in and say this person says they want to get stronger. That's not a functional goal. But if I can go in and say this person says that they want to get stronger so that they can reach their pots that are, or reach their, bowls that are up high, or, if there's something functional attached to it, then they'll cover it. As long as the treatment is considered skilled, which means I can't go in and count your repetitions while you do your exercises and call it therapy, because anybody can go in and count your repetitions. It has to be, I'm progressing your exercises each time. I'm teaching you a new adaptive strategy. There has to be a reason that the OT has to do it versus a caregiver or a family member. Even if you say, well, they don't have a caregiver or a family member, that's not really a good enough excuse. They want to know why somebody with an OT degree has to be in there, and that it's medically necessary. So medically necessary, I haven't really run into too many issues because it's pretty easy for me with all those research studies that I talked about at the beginning to say why these things are medically necessary, even if it's for their mental health. So, and the one little caveat in here is I said progress has to continue. There are maintenance plans that you can put a patient on, and Medicare will still cover them, where if somebody has a progressive disease like Parkinson's or MS or ALS, whatever, where a decline is expected, you don't have to always show progress. You have to show that I'm in there to prevent or slow the decline. So that's another option. So various different areas that you're going to see OT, and it's kind of designed to be a little bit of a continuum. A lot of people start in the hospital. You may get OT in the hospital or PT. It's very limited. You might get a visit, maybe 2 visits. It's not going to be very intensive. It's usually to see what you need, either equipment to send you home with, or do you qualify for skilled nursing, or do you qualify for home health, or what, it's more of an assessment. And then there's inpatient rehab. Our hospital has a great inpatient rehab here, but it's small. That's a little bit of a higher level of therapy than you're going to get in a skilled nursing facility. So in the inpatient rehab, you have to hit higher levels of minutes, higher numbers of minutes to tolerate therapy and things like that. In a skilled nursing facility, you're going to get therapy. Unfortunately, since I've worked in some of these facilities, they've really pulled back on how much therapy people are getting. It used to be people go into a skilled nursing facility and you'd stay there 3 months and you'd get therapy 6 days a week. And they made more money the more services they provided, and Medicare changed all that. And now it's harder to get qualified to get into these facilities. And once you're there, you're staying maybe a week and you're getting fewer minutes of therapy while you're there. Same with home health. So once you're discharged from the skilled nursing, you're going to go home, probably get home health. In order to qualify for home health services, you have to be considered homebound, which means it's a taxing effort for you to leave the house. So same thing. You used to be able to get a lot more services, and now they're pulling back. So then there's outpatient, and that's what I am. But I'm mobile outpatient. I bill the exact same as a clinic that you might go to, like Pivot PT or Emerge Ortho, or there's a million of them. I bill exactly like them, so I fall under all the same requirements of them, which we already discussed. But I bring the clinic to you. And there are a handful of us in the area that do mobile therapy. Not a ton, but a handful. How is quality independence different? Basically just that I'm mobile and I'll come to you. You don't have homebound requirements like you do in home health, although what I do looks very similar to what they do in home health. Small, privately, locally owned. My clients are like my family. My goal is to be your provider for life. So you don't always have to, every time you get sick, have to find somebody new. And I always provide one-on-one care, because sometimes that's a downside of going to a clinic, is the therapists are juggling multiple patients at one time. So the takeaways that I hope you get from this is basically there's no hopeless or helpless situation if you have an open mind to learn how to do things a little bit differently. So if there's a will, there's a way. There's a tool for that. Let us come in and work with you and find different ways to do things. And basically just that engagement in meaningful occupation is a key factor in successful aging. So if you have a family member, or if you know somebody who is an older adult who is just sitting in their recliner, let's figure out what we can do to engage them in meaningful occupations. So I think that's it. Thank you. Anyone have any questions or concerns? Or
I was caring for my father recently, and he had a really bad ear infection. And did not want water in his ear. And I wanted to really shampoo his hair well. Can you go a little bit about shampooing, like somebody, again, that's elderly? What are some tips you could give there?
Well, nowadays there's a lot of the dry shampoos and whatnot. I know they're not great. They make the shampoo caps, same thing. They're not great. I think the caps are a little bit better than a dry shampoo, but you can always try to just put something like wax or silly putty right there in the outer part of the ear to protect it, to keep from getting water in there, as long as you're very careful, not pushing it in too deep. Another option is if you do have a shower seat and they can just put their head back, and you get a handheld shower head or a bucket, and you can, pour things on a lot more carefully to keep that ear closed, or hold a washcloth over it while you pour, things like that. If you even have somebody who is bedbound, there are little tubs that you slide underneath, you inflate them, and they have a drain, so you can pour water in there and do it while they're lying down. And that gives you a lot more control in a situation like that. And then again, you can drain that out, and yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? All right.
The person online was asking, I found the contact information and addresses for
the adaptive services, you gave his name, I got his info on there.
Yeah, and all of that should be on the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services website. If you go to the divisions, you can pull up all the different divisions and you'll find them on there.
Awesome, thank you all for that too.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions? All right, I know that was a lot of talking, so thank you for bearing with me. Oh, sorry, Valerie.
When you do your assessment,
Mhm.
like the fall prevention, how you did with me, will you like share that, like when you first go into the house, because that's education of it?
You said what, like I did with you, are you talking about?
The balance?
Yes, the balance test, yeah. So I do some standardized tests, and one of them is a Berg balance test. That's another way we're similar with PT. PTs do those tests all the time, but a Berg balance test just has you, it goes from, basic balance while you're sitting to are you able to stand on one foot, and it gives me a score, and that falls into a category of a, no fall risk, mild fall risk, and all the way up. So I do a number of standardized tests that give, scores, and that helps with getting insurance to pay for things. So. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you for your information. There's a lot of information, and she does have copies of the presentation if you want to take a copy with you. We also want to thank our sponsor tonight, Elder House, and encourage everybody that if you have questions for either of these ladies, they're at the back of the room. See them before you go. Be sure to complete a survey for us, an evaluation of tonight's program, so we can help make things better. If you have any recommendations or suggestions for topics, we'd be happy to take those. Also, the reminder that you can see all of our presentations on our website. It's www.acapcommunity.org/Cape Fear, or on Facebook, you can find us at facebook.com/ACAP Cape Fear. So all those recordings will be found there. If you'd like to be on the mailing list, we have documentation for that, or just see one of us or go online. Many options. We will be at the same location next month, May the 14th, and our presentation will be Project Care, Caregiver Alternatives to Running on Empty. Okay. So thank you for coming tonight. It's great to see everyone again. We'll see you next month.
Very informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.